Welcome to a new video. Let's take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. The first story is called, Walk a Shift in My Shoes, Bossman. My first job when I was a teen was as a dishwasher in a coffee shop. It freshly opened a month prior in my seaside town. The owners had just left other jobs with a bit of cash and set up the place. They thought it would be easy money ticking over in the background of their retirements. The problem, of course, was they didn't want to work in it. But they also didn't want to hire an experienced manager to run it either. As you can assume, problems ensued from the get-go. My malicious compliance was late on in the summer. My job was to clear and clean all the tables, wash and dry all the dishes and make sure the floor was spotless. The problem, of course, was that takes at least 2 people to do on a calm day. Never mind busy weekends in the midst of the summer holidays. And as the boss didn't work there, he assumed I could do it all by myself. Now, I didn't have any frame of reference for how hard a job actually should be. So for the entire summer, I had been working as hard as I could, doing all this and barely making it work. I had adopted so many shortcuts that the dishwasher never actually got used, as the baristas were telling me to hand wash stuff as they needed to serve it. We barely had enough cups to have the place full of coffee guzzlers and have some dirty to wash in the kitchen. So that meant I was in the kitchen most of the time scrubbing, and barely having enough time to run out and lift dirty trays. But I still managed to do both. Of course, the boss would walk in randomly in the day and I'd get a telling off for the floor is dirty, or a tray on a table. Didn't matter if the tray had been there 10 seconds, it was my fault. Now, I had dealt with this all so far, sucked it up and just pushed on thinking I must have just been slow. That was until the busiest day of the year when we have a show in town. The place was full and so busy, people didn't even mind standing with no seats to have a drink. The boss gets called in as we are swamped and not coping. No cups, long queue of angry customers, people sitting at dirty tables. When he walks in, he immediately points at every table with an empty cup on it and then says there is no cutlery, only to further add that the floor is a disgrace. I brick it and run out to the floor to clean and ask him to cover the dish washing for a minute. I had been stuck hand washing dishes just so that baristas had something to put coffee in. He's appalled but complies. It's only when I get back I see he's obviously never worked back here before. He's actually spent the entire time I'm on the floor, just packing a handful of dishes onto a dishwasher tray. The problem is that it takes ages to pack and wash and he hasn't cleared any space for my new dishes to be placed. I laugh a little to myself and ask him to help move stuff, so I can set the new tray down. He flips as if he's shocked I can't wash dishes in my own hands. Bear in mind, I have a tray of maybe 8 cups, teapots, ice cream cones, etc. He gets space and the baristas start asking for cups. I start hand washing one to hand over and he scowls at me. Everything must go through the dishwasher. And then he walks off to mingle in front of the house again. Alright mate. If you want it that way, then have it that way. I start packing up the dishwasher and try to organize the stacks of trays. Not 2 minutes go by before 4 baristas are screaming for cups and teapots. I just have to tell them the boss's new rules. Boss now flies in and whips open the dishwasher before it's done, telling me to start hand washing again. I start hand washing and he immediately follows with, there are tables out there with dishes. I had been pretty frightened of him until now. But having seen him start to lose his cool a little, it dawned on me that I was being overworked, and this guy didn't even know it yet. So instead of making any point or argument, I realized the best way to let him know is by showing him. I leave to get a full tray from out front. It takes a while to stack a few tables trays together. And while I was doing that, he was sweating in the back, following baristas cleaning orders, hand doing dishes as they were needed. Of course, when I get back, there is again nowhere to put the trays and he's now scowling at everyone as if we had constructed the building ourselves. Again I say, that there is nowhere to put trays. I am including the floor, where trays were already stacked. He then runs out when I get the trays unpacked into some stacks of dishes and he's back to the front of the house. I have then to start cutlery. Anyone that's worked in a restaurant or cafe knows the bane of cutlery. I'm nearly done scrubbing cutlery clean when the boss reappears and without looking pours coffee and tea onto my clean cutlery in the sink. At this point, I can see he's defeated. He knows how precious my time is suddenly and he knows he has just made it worse for me by doing that. He walks back out, still holding the now empty mugs and leaves me to start the cutlery anew. Maybe a minute goes by when he walks back in and just asks me to tell him how I do my job. Finally, I wash and talk, telling him all the little tricks and tips for making sure things are still moving out the front. I can tell now from his face as I relay how this place actually works that he genuinely didn't know. I can see somewhere in his head he's just realized how he must have been treating myself and other younger staff all summer to this point. He's sort of looking a bit broken. 15 minutes into working at his own cafe and he's broken. The rest of the shift, he had his wife come down and the three of us worked the full shift to close. At the end of the day, he actually apologized for making me work like that, and he'd always have staff on the accommodate busy shifts. I actually went to work for him every summer after that, until I left college. I actually really appreciated his reaction to that day and always did a little extra than I needed to, and in return, he always paid me a little better for the extra work. The next story is called, Don't Believe Inhalers Are Needed? So, this is actually a story that the posters my mum told him from when she was in 8th grade. She had this art teacher who absolutely hated her. She was an older lady, with only 1 year left before retirement. This will be important later. My mum had physical education right before her art class, and she also has really bad asthma. She had left her inhaler in her locker, and when she was let out late of the gym, she decided to go straight to art, drop off her backpack, and then ask to go grab her inhaler from her locker. The teacher, having hated my mum for some time, told her to wait until announcements were over and then she could leave. She decided not to fight and to go wait for announcements. My mum's friends were ticked and they knew she had terrible asthma, so they were trying to convince her to just leave the classroom because the teacher didn't deserve her attention, being the witch she was. My mum said no and waited patiently until she was allowed to leave. Once the announcements were over, she went to the teacher, asking if she could finally leave. Her response was, well, if you had enough oxygen to sit there and talk to your friends rather than listening, then I don't think you need your inhaler. At this point, my mum is wheezing and had started to get a headache from not being able to breathe. But again, she listens to her teacher, not wanting to get further on her bad side, and waits for class to end before she can grab her inhaler. Her friends continue, telling her to just leave since she isn't doing any work anyway, but she tells them to just wait, knowing full well how her body reacts to asthma attacks. At the end of class, her friends booked it with my mum's locker combination to grab her inhaler because my mum was in no shape to run. However, when they finally brought it to her, she couldn't take in enough air for the inhaler to be of any help. Her friends rushed her to the nurse's office where they told her about the teacher and how my mum couldn't breathe. The nurse ended up having to call an ambulance. My mum was rushed to the hospital, admitted into the intensive care unit, almost had to get intubated, and was there for 10 days. Her parents were furious and my grandfather was ready to sue the entire state. The school, knowing that the teacher was only a year away from retirement and not wanting to take away the benefits she'd earned from staying, ended up striking a deal with my grandparents. My mum no longer had to take art, even though it was a required class for 8th grade. So she aided for the counselors that period. The school district was also in charge of paying for my mum's medical bills. My grandparents wanted her to lose her job but agreed to the terms. But the story doesn't end there. My mum's brother, who was in 7th grade at the time of the incident, had to take sculpting the next year with the same teacher. It was her last year. A few weeks into the class, my grandparents got a letter informing them that my uncle was failing art. When confronted, he told them that on the first day of school, he had asked the teacher a question and she had accused him of being disrespectful. As punishment, she made him sit in a room that branched off from the main classroom. Every day afterward, she would falsely accuse him of something and force him to sit in that room, where he couldn't get any work done, hence why he was failing. My grandmother called up the school district in a rage, telling them that the original agreement was now off because the teacher was unfairly taking out her rage on my uncle and that they were ready to sue. Because the school district never thought to get my grandparents to sign a contract saying they wouldn't sue, they were forced to fire the teacher, much to the delight of my mother. She never got the benefits from retirement. The last story is called, It's Usually a Good Idea to Know Your Own Rules. It's 1994 and I'm in 8th grade at a private religious school that had some very interesting rules. One of which was, that we were not allowed to bring meat to school. They had some other really weird views on things like medicine, if that gives you some idea of the religion. Neither myself nor my family subscribed to the school's religion, but it happened to be the best private school in the area. And I was having some issues with bullying in public school, so this is where I landed. I have blood sugar issues that have since become more manageable, but due to the dietary restrictions and general rules of this school, I was not allowed to eat as often or as nutritious as was necessary in order for me to maintain myself throughout the day. And as such, I was often irritable and before long, I was labeled a troublemaker. One Thursday afternoon in the spring I had a particularly bad blood sugar episode after gym class, and had to be sent to the nurse. Although she had basic medical training, it was only enough to placate the school's insurance, and per their religion, she did absolutely nothing but allow one to lie down and pray until they felt better. I straight up passed out. Like for the rest of the school day. I was actually stirred back to consciousness by the sound of my mother screaming at the principal, nurse, and receptionist, about 30 feet and 3 walls away. However motivating the ruckus was, I could not pull myself off of the infirmary cot. My mother had to carry me out to the car and drive me to the emergency room for emergency rehydration. I did not return to school on Friday, prompting my best friend Craig to call and check on me. I told him what happened, and he said he had a plan. The following Monday, we had physical education in the morning. The school was a K-12, so our gym class hours would switch with the younger classes, depending on the weather. On this particular day, we were doing timed mile runs. Now I've always been a gangly dude with an above-average stride, so my average mile time was pretty good. But today, I decided to push myself. I was one of the first to finish, with Craig coming in close behind. We went to the grass to relax, and Craig pulls something out of the waistband of his shorts. It's his mum's credit card. He then tells me that his dad's cell phone, uncommon in '94 but not unheard of in his dad's line of work, is in his gym locker. We ask for permission to go change for lunch since the run is all we're doing today. Gym teacher says yes, and we run to the locker room. We get to the locker room and begin to enact our plan. Craig calls Pizza Hut and orders a large meat lovers pizza to be delivered to us at school. The school has strict, but ambiguously written rules about students conducting financial transactions on school grounds, so we used the credit card to pay for the pizza over the phone, so no money changed hands on the property. Fast forward 25 minutes, Craig and I are sitting in the cafeteria with our friends, the two of us not eating. Enter Pizza Hut guy, who thankfully seemed intrigued by what happened. Imagine you're a pizza guy called to a school cafeteria with a single pizza. Every eye in the room was on this guy as he awkwardly said, "I have a large meat lover's pizza for a Craig." Craig and I look at each other and leap up, run up to the guy, and Craig says, "I'm Craig. That's for me." He then shows the credit card used to place the order and guy seems okay with this. At this moment, the principal comes running out of his office, just as Craig and I lift the lid on the box to inspect the pizza before taking it from the delivery guy. The principal gets hit full in the face with a wave of hot meat fumes and absolutely loses his mind, slapping the pizza box closed and sending it to the floor, thankfully unharmed. Craig and I were taken by the ear to the office, where we were told to wait for our parents. My mother arrived about 15 minutes later, absolutely furious that she had to leave work, and Craig's dad, who had been at home waiting for the phone to ring, arrived a couple of minutes later. The conversation that followed went about like this: "Your boys violated the rules and are subject to expulsion." Craig's dad asked, "What exactly did they do?" "They brought meat to school and conducted a financial transaction on school grounds." "Didn't you say they had it delivered?" "Well, yes, but what does that have to do with this?" "So they didn't bring it then?" "Well, they had it brought, that's the same thing." "Show me the student handbook." Lo and behold, it doesn't say anything about being brought meat at school, only bringing it ourselves. One down. That still doesn't excuse the financial transaction rule. How was the pizza paid for? I assume it was cash since neither of these boys is old enough to have a credit card. See, that's where you're wrong. I gave Craig a credit card in case of emergencies. Name one instance in which ordering a pizza is an emergency. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't one kid hospitalized last week for blood sugar-related exhaustion and dehydration? That's confidential school information. Actually, Craig is my best friend, so he knows all about it. He even called me over the weekend to check on me. Did you? No, he didn't. No one from the school did. The principal stammers. I have wasted enough of my time here today, and I'm starting to think that I have wasted enough of my money here overall. Do you want to expel my kid? Fine. I'll pull all 4 of my kids out. Now you're losing 5 tuition checks a month over a pizza and some kids who apparently know your rules better than you do. My mum nods in agreement. We stand up to leave. The principal ended up backpedaling hard, and we got off without any repercussions. To put the cherry on our day, Craig's dad pointed out the rule about finishing your entire lunch or getting into trouble, and since you kept these boys in the office for their entire lunch period, you have to give them the opportunity to follow the rules like everyone else. So Craig and I got to sit in the cafeteria by ourselves for an entire period, eating our now cold victory pizza. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please consider subscribing to the channel for more content. Let me know what you think about the stories in the comment section below. Have a great day. Bye bye.